Welcome back, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt, joined by the former National Security Advisor to President Trump, Ambassador Robert C. O'Brien. Good morning, Mr. Ambassador. Good to talk to you. That's the wrong picture, by the way. I don't know who that Robert O'Brien is, but take that down because that wasn't the real Robert O'Brien. That looked like Groucho Marx, Robert O'Brien. We just put up a picture of you that looked like Groucho Marx.
Anything's an improvement here.
Hey, I want to do a number of things with you. First of all, talk to us about Turkey, our relationship with us, and what we're doing right now, or what you think we would be doing had this happened under Donald Trump's watch and you were still in the West Wing office facing the Pennsylvania Avenue.
Well, look, there are some things that are beyond politics, and when we look at the earthquake and the humanitarian disaster that's occurring in both Turkey and Syria, we need to figure out how we can get help to the people that are suffering. And we're all moved by the photos and the videos of babies and toddlers coming out of the rubble. And we need to make sure we're doing everything we can to support the Turkish authorities and even get into Syria, which is a bad regime that we're not friends with, of course. But we need to get humanitarian aid to the people who are suffering from the earthquake. And I'd be moving heaven and earth to get everything we could to these countries as fast as we can.
Now, I'm just curious, how does it work, though? Because I remember Nixon finally had to yell at people and say, send everything that can fly and fill it full of ammunition when the Yom Kippur War was underway. How does the American government engage in this?
Well, you work through it depends on the country. With Turkey, we have bilateral relationships that are strong. Turkey's a NATO member, and so we have an air base called Incirlik in Turkey. There are obviously plenty of big modern airports in Turkey, so we just need to be flying material and rescuers and search dogs and all that sort of thing as quickly as possible into Turkey. It's a little more difficult with Syria because we don't have diplomatic relations with the country. The Assad regime is brutal. We want to make sure that whatever material we send doesn't go to enrich the regime, but goes to the victims of the earthquake. So we can work through the Red Cross, through the Red Crescent, and through the UN, and potentially in some areas through the Turks.
You know, Mr. Ambassador, I went to Ankara with your predecessor, John Bolton, when he had the national security job. I have never been in a more depressing city. It was all concrete. But apparently they don't use rebar in Turkey. Are you surprised that it all fell down this way?
Well, look, this is a problem throughout the world, and especially throughout the developing world. And parts of Turkey are quite modern, and parts are quite old, going back to Roman times. And so when structures are built on top of other structures and on top of other structures, you don't always get the, as we've seen, you don't get the type of resilience that we expect in the building codes here. And there's corruption in those countries, and the building inspections are pretty lax. So I'm not entirely surprised. But Turkey's a modern country, and I think newer buildings are probably meet the correct criteria for earthquakes. But some of the older stuff is suspect, and unfortunately, a lot of people pay with their lives because of that.
Yeah, you and I are both Angelinos for long parts of our lives, and we know what it's like after. You're just very glad for building codes after one of these. Now, Mr. Ambassador, I'd specifically asked you on when the Chinese balloon was meandering from our missile field to our nuclear subpens, because the accusation was leveled that this had happened before in the Trump years. So what is your response to that accusation?
Well, we were never briefed on any sort of incursion like this at all during the Trump years. I don't think it happened. And I've pulsed this out to folks like Secretary Pompeo, who was there all 4 years. As you know, I started out the Trump years as a hostage envoy, so I wouldn't have necessarily been tracking balloons, but certainly in the last year and a half of the administration when I was National Security Advisor, we never had an incident like this. Matt Pottinger, my deputy, who was the Senior Director for Asia, had never seen it. His successor, who'd been there for 4 years, had never seen it. So we're now hearing that there may have been some minor incursions or flights near our territorial waters. We'll have to see what happens and what comes out, but there was nothing at all of the nature that we saw last week, which is just a humiliation. I mean, the Chinese must take us for absolute chumps to think that they could put this balloon over the country, sail it over, propel it with propellers, manipulate its course, collect intelligence on us with school buses full of equipment, and that we wouldn't do anything.
I am wondering what the Chinese think. I asked Secretary of State Pompeo this on Tuesday night, and you just brought it up. We let this thing from the Aleutian Islands all the way to the Atlantic and we invented an excuse for not shooting it down. Congressman Zinke said Petroleum County in Montana has less people in it than the entire United States Congress. It could have been brought. Do you doubt for a moment we could have brought it down without any danger to people on the ground?
Oh, we could have brought it down. And look, I think the folks who said we were worried about ranchers in Montana, I think if you did a poll of ranchers in Montana, they would have said we'd take the risk of getting hit to bring that thing down. I mean, they're patriots in Montana. They didn't want that spy balloon sitting over our nuclear sites, collecting intelligence on our second strike capability. And so there's no doubt. But Hugh, it goes back earlier than Montana. It should have been taken down when it crossed into U.S. territorial waters 12 miles off the coast of Alaska. That's when it should have been taken down days earlier. And we'll have to figure out why that didn't happen and what the foul-up was. But we can never let this happen again. And we've got to start taking action against the Chinese that we can take relatively easily right now. And we've got TikTok. People always think about a surveillance balloon. Every phone with TikTok on is like a surveillance balloon in your house. It's collecting on your voice, your passwords, your data, all the most private things in your life. And it's shooting right up to the cloud for the Chinese Communist Party to access anytime it wants to. So we've got to get rid of TikTok.
You know, people don't believe that, but I want you to repeat that. But people don't believe that, but I told the fiance of my son who had TikTok, I said, you know, he's in naval intelligence. You can't have that phone in here. And why not? I said, it just absorbs everything.
People ought to look at the terms of use of TikTok. It gives TikTok access to everything in your phone. So once you put on TikTok, it's like, and they catch you with cat videos and dance videos. And while you're watching that, they're stealing everything off your phone. Every bit of data on your phone, your medical records, your political leanings, your emails. I mean, they've got total access to your phone. It's like Alexa; they can listen in on you. So, and it really worries me. You know, we all have families who are in the military. Some of them have TikTok. If a war broke out between the U.S. and China, heaven forbid, it would be very easy for the Chinese to geolocate our pilots, our surface warfare officers, all the key folks they need. And think how easy it would be to take them out at their apartments or kidnap them or cause financial problems for them while they're trying to get prepared for war. It's a lot easier to take out a pilot in an apartment building than it is to shoot down his F-35.
I can't emphasize enough so we've got to do obvious things. I mean, we've just got to do obvious things like ban TikTok. Mr. Ambassador, yesterday Microsoft announced that, and you've made this point before, so I want to go back to it, that they are linking up Bing to artificial intelligence. Google stock fell 8%. I'm not asking you to comment on the companies, but it proves that creative destruction of capitalism is amazing and that technology advances. I'm very leery of jumping all over Silicon Valley for fear that we lose that competitive advantage that we have over the Chinese. And so when we see something happen in America, we know the Chinese are now going to try and steal from Microsoft what they just developed, right?
Oh, absolutely. They'll try and steal it. They'll replicate it, and then they'll try and sell it for cheaper or improve on it. So the industrial espionage and the espionage of state secrets by the Chinese is something we've never seen in history. Christopher Wray, our FBI director, says it's the biggest transfer of human wealth in history. What the Chinese have stolen from us. So it's a huge problem. And look, we make it easy. They've got Confucius Institutes at almost every major university in America, or the equivalent. And these institutes are used to bully Chinese expat students, but they're also used for propaganda purposes, but more importantly for the Chinese to spy on our universities where this great innovation is taking place. So we need to protect our universities. We need to protect our great tech companies. And here's the thing. We all have problems with big tech. I mean, we saw the Twitter hearings yesterday. It was terrible what happened. It was horrible with the run-up to the election and how the tech companies censored free speech. But if we get rid of the tech companies, what's left? 10 of the 20 biggest tech companies in the world are in Beijing. If we get rid of our tech companies, we're going to lose our ability to compete in AI and quantum and robotics, all these areas where we need to stay ahead of the Chinese to win the next conflict. And just because we're upset with the free speech issues, we need to deal with those issues on their own and not destroy these companies because of it.
Scalpel, not a nuclear weapon. Scalpel. Coming up after the break, I've got Dan Runde, your friend and mine, coming on to talk about his new book, The American Imperative. I see you blurbed it. He writes in here that China is basically got three big vulnerabilities: demographics, debt, and deceptive business practices. Meaning that their demographics are very poorly managed. Their debt is extraordinary and getting larger. but their deceptive business practices, I'm going to press Dan on this, don't strike me as a weakness. It strikes me as a strength, provided we put up with them.
Well, it's only a strength if we allow it. So if we allow them to list their public companies on NASDAQ and on the NYSE and on the commodities exchanges and pretend that their fake numbers are real, we allow them to engage in these practices and suck capital out of America. We're funding the buildup of the PLA Navy and the PLA Air Force. We've got billions of retiree money going to Beijing to build up these companies, which are supposedly dual use. But there's no way to separate if you're helping them develop a civilian airliner and that same company's building fighter jets. The U.S. is subsidizing it. One of the things we did at the end of the Trump administration is we cut off the thrift savings program, the retirement program for our military, which was set to invest in China in some of the very industries that would be used to sink our ships and shoot down our planes. And they'd be using our military veterans and our active duty service members' money to do it. And we cut that off, and we need to do that on a broader scale. The other thing we need to do is we need to stop them from buying farmland. I mean, they're using our money that we invested, and they're coming back here and buying farmland. And the farmland is adjacent to our most critical nuclear sites, our Air Force bases in places like Grand Forks, North Dakota, or Laughlin in Texas. And we're just allowing them to come in and buy this property. Can you imagine the Chinese allowing us, an American company, to come buy thousands of acres next to their most sensitive PLA Air Force bases? Never happened.
Never happened. So let me close where we began, Mr. Ambassador. I've been raising money for Turkish relief via Food for the Poor over at HughHewitt.com. Did you get along well with your counterpart to President Erdogan?
I did. He's a man named Ibrahim Khalil. He taught at George Washington University. He's very committed to Erdogan and the AKP, and we didn't always see eye to eye on policy, that's for sure, but he was a very cordial guy, and we got along well. And look, one of the things, allies aren't perfect, and Turkey's a NATO ally, and I'm a little upset with them at the way they're holding up Finland and Sweden for NATO membership. But it's better to have Turkey as an ally than not as an ally. And so we tried to have good relations with Turkey, notwithstanding the disputes we had. But right now, this earthquake is something that's really beyond politics. We need to do what we can to help the Turkish people, and we need to do it in a way to make sure that the aid that people are volunteering goes to the people and the victims and not to the government.
Amen. Dr. Ambassador Robert O'Brien, you're not a doctor. I'm not going to call you a doctor. Ambassador Robert O'Brien, great to have you back, Mr. Ambassador. Keep coming back.